For as long as downloadable content has existed, players have argued over its value. Most DLC feels like a handful of missions or cosmetic items packaged for extra cash. But then there are rare expansions that don't just add to a game, they transform it. Red Dead Redemption's Undead Nightmare, released in 2010, remains the clearest example of what DLC can achieve when developers chase imagination instead of easy profit. 15 years on, its unhinged brilliance has never been topped. Instead of continuing the tragic tale of John Marston and the harsh, dying American West, Rockstar Games made the boldest creative pivot possible. It resurrected the frontier as a nightmarish, undead hellscape. Zombies shuffle across the plains, cursed stallions burst into ghostly flames, and legends like Sasquatch wander the woods in sorrow. Where Red Dead Redemption mourned the end of the cowboy era, Undead Nightmare twisted that same world into a pulpy, supernatural fever dream worthy of George A. Romero with a dash of campy Western folklore. A familiar frontier, completely reimagined. What made Undead Nightmare so extraordinary wasn't just its zombies, it was its fidelity to the characters and tone established by the original game. John Marston fights to save his family, but his mission unfolds in an apocalyptic parody of the world players once knew. Friends and foes return, not rewritten, but thrown into chaotic new circumstances that test their established personalities and deepen the mythos. Humor sneaks in where tragedy once stood. Watching John scold his tied-up undead wife and son remains gaming comedy gold, yet the emotional stakes never vanish. The West hasn't just fallen into conflict, it's fallen into madness. Gameplay that forces players to adapt. In Red Dead Redemption, a bullet to the chest ends a fight. Undead Nightmare flips that logic. Headshots become essential, ammunition runs dry fast, and cowboy instincts aren't enough to survive. The game pushes players to rethink every encounter, blending survival horror strategy with Western gunplay. New tools like holy water and torches force creative combat, and towns must be rescued from hordes instead of outlaws. Even the open range changes. Frontier trails, once symbols of freedom, become eerie, fog-choked gauntlets. And just when players think they've mastered the undead, something stranger, and often more mythical, emerges from the shadows. A side quest that haunts players forever. Among the expansion's wild supernatural encounters, one mission stands above all: the Sasquatch hunting quest. What begins as monster-slaying bravado turns into one of gaming's most sobering moral reversals. When the final surviving Sasquatch reveals the truth, that they are gentle creatures driven to extinction, the player becomes the villain. It's a moment of quiet devastation tucked inside a zombie cowboy adventure, and it still lingers in players' memories years later. Why it still has no rival. Undead Nightmare succeeds because it never feels like deleted scenes or leftover content. It achieves something rarer, a complete creative reimagining that enhances the original game without needing it as a crutch. Players can jump in blind and enjoy the chaos, or play it as a surreal epilogue to a masterpiece. Rockstar didn't just add content. It took a risk, committing to tone, spectacle, and emotional depth when DLC was still an experiment. That courage set a bar most modern expansions never try to reach. 15 years later, new DLC comes and goes, some polished, some hollow. But Undead Nightmare remains the blueprint for what expansion content can be when ambition wins over caution. It didn't play safe. It didn't follow trends. It rode into the supernatural frontier guns blazing and carved its name in gaming history. Players still talk about it because nothing since has dared to be so wild, so unexpected, and yet so respectful of the world it borrowed. If DLC is meant to extend a game's life, Undead Nightmare proved it can resurrect an entire universe in the most literal, unforgettable way possible.